Have you ever wondered what life might look like for the middle class in just a few years? The truth is, the landscape is changing fast and not necessarily for the better. You might think the comforts and conveniences you enjoy today will always be within reach, but the economic trends suggest otherwise. The harsh reality is that in the next 5 years, many things you take for granted could become luxuries you can no longer afford. From the rising costs of essential services to the shrinking accessibility of quality food and travel, the future is full of financial challenges. But here's the thing, staying informed and prepared can make all the difference. What if I told you that understanding these changes now could save you from future financial stress? In this video, we're going to dive deep into the 7 key things the middle class might struggle to afford in the coming years. It's time to take control of your financial future before it's too late. Housing, one of life's most basic necessities, is rapidly becoming an unaffordable burden for the middle class. With inflation on the rise and housing market bubbles bursting here and there, people are beginning to wonder if they'll even have a roof over their heads in the coming years. Rising interest rates only add fuel to the fire, making homeownership a distant dream for many. The impact on the middle class is profound, as both buying and renting are quickly slipping out of reach. And it's not just in big cities, this trend is spreading across the country. Consider cities like Austin or Miami, where rent prices have skyrocketed by nearly 40% in just a few short years. The real question is, how will the average person adjust to this new normal? This new normal isn't just about soaring prices, it's about the erosion of one of the middle class's most fundamental aspirations, owning a home. When even renting a modest apartment becomes nearly impossible, the idea of stability starts to feel like an illusion. This puts a massive strain on the finances of many families, forcing them to make tough choices between paying rent or investing in other essential areas like education or healthcare. Here, the key word is affordability, or rather the lack thereof. Sure, there are options like relocating to more affordable areas, but that could mean long commutes, less family time, and ultimately, a lower quality of life. And the consequences don't stop there. When the middle class can't keep up with the rising cost of living, the entire social fabric begins to unravel. Increased inequality, economic stagnation, and a growing sense of hopelessness could become the new reality. Of course, some are trying to cope, like moving in with relatives or seeking alternative housing markets, perhaps even abroad. But these temporary fixes don't address the underlying issue, a looming affordability crisis that's unfolding right before our eyes. Now, if you thought the housing crisis was bad, wait until you see what's happening with higher education. The cost of higher education is spiraling out of control, putting a once reliable path to upward mobility increasingly out of reach for the middle class. Tuition fees continue to rise year after year, and student loans are piling up faster than ever. What used to be considered a smart investment is now becoming a risky financial gamble. For many middle-class families, the idea of sending their children to college without sinking into massive debt is becoming a distant memory. The return on investment for a college degree is shrinking, making it harder to justify the skyrocketing costs. Recent data shows that average tuition at public universities has increased by nearly 30% over the last decade, leaving many to wonder if a degree is still worth it. This financial strain doesn't just hit parents, it weighs heavily on students too. Graduating with a mountain of debt can feel like starting life with a ball and chain. The promise of higher earnings after college is often overshadowed by the burden of repaying student loans. This makes the pursuit of higher education a daunting prospect for many in the middle class. Even scholarships and financial aid, while helpful, often aren't enough to cover the rising expenses, leaving families to figure out how to fill the gap. This situation forces some to consider alternatives like community college, trade schools, or even skipping higher education altogether, despite the societal pressure to earn a degree. The rising cost of education is not just a personal issue, it's a societal one. When the middle class can't afford to educate their children, it threatens the very fabric of social mobility. The gap between the haves and have-nots widens, creating a more divided and unequal society. Those who can afford the best education will continue to climb the ladder, while those who can't may find themselves stuck in a cycle of economic stagnation. The stakes are high, and the choices made now will reverberate for years to come. But as daunting as the education dilemma is, the challenges don't end there. The next hurdle for the middle class? The rising costs of healthcare. Healthcare costs are climbing at an alarming rate, creating a significant strain on the middle class. With insurance premiums, out-of-pocket expenses, and prescription drug prices all on the rise, maintaining good health is becoming increasingly expensive. For many, what was once a manageable cost is now a heavy burden. The financial trends in healthcare are clear. Expenses are outpacing wage growth, making it harder for the middle class to keep up. A trip to the doctor or an unexpected medical bill can throw even the most carefully planned budget into disarray. Recent studies show that healthcare costs have risen by nearly 20% over the past 5 years, a trend that shows no signs of slowing down. This growing financial pressure isn't just about money, it's about access to essential care. When healthcare becomes unaffordable, people are forced to make tough choices, such as delaying or foregoing treatment. This can lead to worsening health conditions, which in turn lead to even higher costs down the road. The middle class, already squeezed by other rising expenses, finds itself in a vicious cycle where maintaining health is increasingly out of reach. Comparative analysis reveals that the cost of healthcare today is significantly higher than it was just a few years ago, and projections indicate that it will only get worse over the next 5 years. The implications are profound. When the middle class can't afford healthcare, the consequences ripple through society. Increased absenteeism, reduced productivity, and a decline in overall well-being are just a few of the potential outcomes. Moreover, the stress of managing rising healthcare costs can take a toll on mental health, adding yet another layer of complexity to the issue. Some are turning to alternatives like telemedicine or international healthcare options to find relief, but these solutions are not accessible to everyone. And just as healthcare becomes a more pressing concern, the middle class must also grapple with another escalating cost: energy. Topic 4. Energy costs. Energy costs are on a steep upward trajectory, putting additional strain on middle-class budgets already stretched thin. Factors like climate change policies, supply chain disruptions, and aging infrastructure are driving up prices for everything from electricity to gasoline. As these costs rise, so too does the burden on households trying to manage their day-to-day expenses. The financial trends indicate that energy will become an increasingly significant part of the cost of living. Take, for example, the recent spikes in utility bills or gasoline prices that have left many middle-class families scrambling to adjust their budgets. These rising expenses are not just inconvenient, they're a serious challenge to affordability. As energy costs climb, the impact on the middle class becomes even more pronounced. Heating and cooling homes, fueling cars, and keeping the lights on are all essential aspects of daily life, yet they are becoming harder to afford. This is especially true in regions with extreme temperatures, where energy consumption is non-negotiable. The rising expenses force families to make tough decisions, such as cutting back on other necessities, or even sacrificing comfort to keep costs down. And with energy prices expected to continue rising over the next 5 years, the outlook is concerning. Recent examples show that energy bills have increased by as much as 15% in some areas, and this trend is likely to persist. The broader implications are significant. As energy costs rise, they contribute to an overall increase in the cost of living, putting additional pressure on the middle class. This, in turn, can lead to reduced disposable income, lower savings, and less financial security. The stress of managing these rising costs can also take a toll on mental well-being, compounding the challenges faced by middle-class families. Some are exploring alternative energy sources like solar panels or electric vehicles to offset these expenses, but the initial investment can be prohibitive. With energy becoming a growing concern, the middle class is also starting to feel the pinch in another essential area: quality food. The cost of putting quality food on the table is another challenge that's hitting the middle class hard. With the rising prices of organic and fresh foods, driven by supply chain disruptions, inflation, and environmental factors, it's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain a healthy diet without breaking the bank. Many families are finding that the affordability of nutritious food is slipping away, making it harder to prioritize health amidst the rising expenses of everyday life. This issue of affordability forces many to make tough choices. When budgets are tight, families might opt for cheaper, less nutritious options, sacrificing quality for cost. It's not uncommon for middle-class households to start cutting back on fresh produce or organic products, even though they know the long-term benefits. For instance, choosing processed foods over fresh vegetables might save money now, but it could lead to higher healthcare costs down the road. The financial trends we're seeing suggest that these tough decisions will only become more common as economic forecasts point to continued inflation in the food sector. However, there are ways to navigate these rising costs without compromising too much on quality. Growing your own food, for instance, can be a rewarding and cost-effective alternative. Even if you don't have a garden, small herb pots or community gardening can make a difference. Additionally, exploring less expensive diets like focusing on seasonal produce or bulk buying can help stretch your budget further. While these strategies won't completely solve the issue, they can certainly alleviate some of the financial pressures. Speaking of pressures, have you noticed how vacations are becoming less affordable too? Traveling, once a cherished luxury for many middle-class families, is quickly becoming another expense that's harder to justify. The costs associated with travel, airfare, accommodation, and even fuel, are all on the rise, making it increasingly difficult to plan that much-needed vacation without dipping deep into savings. Whether it's a quick getaway or a dream trip abroad, the affordability of travel is being eroded by economic factors that are out of most people's control. For many, this means that leisure travel, an essential part of quality of life, is becoming less accessible. As travel expenses climb, many families are forced to reconsider their travel plans. A weekend road trip might now seem too costly with gasoline prices fluctuating unpredictably. Airfare has become a significant financial commitment, often leading people to opt for staycations or shorter, less expensive trips. This shift impacts not only personal enjoyment but also the travel industry at large, which is facing a future where middle-class families might travel less frequently. The rising cost of living makes it harder to justify spending on leisure when there are other, more pressing financial concerns. Looking ahead, the economic forecast for the travel industry suggests that these trends might continue. However, there are ways to navigate these rising costs without giving up on travel entirely. For example, booking in advance, traveling during off-peak seasons, or exploring more budget-friendly destinations can help manage expenses. Additionally, considering alternative forms of travel, like camping or road trips, can offer affordable ways to enjoy time away. But as we know, travel isn't the only financial concern. Saving for retirement is becoming a challenge too. Retirement, once seen as a golden period of life, is now a source of growing concern for the middle class. With rising living costs, stagnant wage growth, and market volatility, saving enough to retire comfortably is becoming an increasingly daunting task. The dream of retiring on time or even retiring at all is slipping away for many as future costs continue to climb and financial trends offer little reassurance. The middle class in particular faces the challenge of balancing current expenses with the need to save for a future that feels more uncertain by the day. The impact of these financial challenges on retirement is profound. Many middle-class families are finding that their savings aren't growing as they'd hoped, leaving them vulnerable to rising expenses in their later years. The economic forecast suggests that without significant changes, a comfortable retirement might be out of reach for a large portion of the population. This could mean working longer, cutting back on spending, or even relying on alternative income streams during retirement. The cost of living, already a burden, becomes even more pressing when considering the long-term needs of healthcare, housing, and daily expenses. But all is not lost. There are strategies that can help mitigate these challenges. Increasing savings rates, for instance, can provide a buffer against future costs. Exploring alternative investments such as real estate or dividend-paying stocks can also offer more stability in a volatile market. Additionally, working with a financial advisor to create a detailed retirement plan can ensure that every dollar saved is working as hard as possible. As we've seen, planning for the future is essential, and staying informed can make all the difference. Now let's tie all these points together in a final summary. As we've explored, the middle class is facing a series of financial challenges that are reshaping the way they live and plan for the future. From rising energy costs to the increasing expense of quality food, travel, and retirement, each of these points highlights a broader trend of growing financial pressure. The cost of living is climbing, and with it, the need for careful planning and informed decision-making becomes more crucial than ever. These challenges are not just statistics. They impact real lives, altering the dreams and aspirations of countless families. But challenges can also be opportunities for growth. By staying informed, making strategic financial choices, and exploring alternative solutions, the middle class can navigate these rising expenses with resilience and foresight. This knowledge isn't just valuable, it's essential for securing a stable and comfortable future. So I encourage you to reflect on these points, apply what you've learned, and take proactive steps toward financial security. If you found this information helpful, don't keep it to yourself, share it with others who might benefit. And if you're serious about staying ahead of the curve, make sure to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you never miss out on valuable insights. What will you do differently now that you're aware of these financial trends? Let's discuss it in the comments below.